the anime hero, and here's my friend.
Mr. Falcon Punch 996.
Yeah, today we're gonna talk about Infini-T Force episodes 4, 5, and 6. We already talked about 1, 2, and 3 in the previous recording of a podcast, but we'll see if things work out better in sound quality this time. If not, we'll still keep trying for the 2 more attempts, and hopefully improvements will be shown. But until then, just bear with us in our shitty selves.
Oh.
Yeah. So Falcon, what do you think of Infini-T Force thus far?
I mean, like, it's alright. It's an alright show. I mean, like, I remember going into it, like, one of the, oh, I won't say bigger concerns, but one concern was, like, how the CG was going to be. And the CG, was held up, the action. But besides that, I mean, like, I don't know, I guess it's been alright. The villains aren't that interesting, and then, like, some of the characters are just kind of meh. Ami's not really a great character either. She's just kind of annoying. Yeah, and then like the first episode was kind of just like, what the fuck with her? Like, if I don't die, I'll go buy an eraser. Like, what the fuck kind of emo bullshit is that?
Yeah, well, I've seen episode 7, but I don't know. Maybe you'll change your mind by then. But then again, there's still a few more episodes left, so it could go anywhere from there. But right now, let's rewind a little bit to episode 4, or I guess talk about episode 3 too. So the last thing that happened in episode 3 was Hurricane Polymer fighting against Damian Gray,
Right.
and we talked about that. We were kind of like a little off focus about like, hey, how can Gotcha Man do that, and all this with the tornado fighter, and how all this attacks were able to destroy all those shooting star meteors. Previous turn in the upcoming episodes, because now this is one thing I noticed recently because I had to rewatch episode 4 because my memory is pretty vague. Is that it seems that all the villains that they're picking against the Tatsunoko heroes, they seem to be an equivalent or a similar in personality or objective, because I was looking back at episode 4, which is called Imaginary Friend. In this episode, we focus on Emmy, and her friend. We'll also focus on the villain Belle Lynn, along with Minami Joji, aka Tekkaman.
Right.
And this relates to the upcoming episode, episode 5. But until we get there, one thing I noticed is that her objective is kind of similar to Tekkaman's, where Belle Lynn's goal was to preserve her species by eradicating everything else, which relates to Tekkaman, who wants to protect the human race from the aliens.
Right.
Yeah. You don't sound that enthusiastic.
Sorry. You're right. No, it's because like I normally keep episode notes. Yeah. I haven't been keeping notes like I normally do, so I'm just like, yeah, that happened. But no, I remember. Yeah. No, I just need to quick start my brain, and then I'll be like,
Yeah.
oh yeah.
Well, I don't know. Maybe it's a little unfocused type of conversation. Yeah. Because right now I'm looking back at the episode, like skimming through it, and Infinity Force thus far, it feels very odd to me how it seems to be partly superhero, but it also goes into this slice of life / drama and reverse harem.
Yeah, I know. See, that part always kind of weirds me out because there's times where like when they're just at Emmy's house and they're not in costume or anything, it just feels like a really weird dating simulator. Where it was like, hey, I'm making avocado pasta. You want some? No, okay. And they like for the most part, especially like in Joji's case, they're all redesigned to be like these extremely like pretty, handsome dudes, and I'm just like,
Yeah, Tekkaman just, what's up with you, Tekka hipster?
yeah, exactly. He looks like Joji looks like he came from like some yaoi series, man.
Yeah, the redesigns. No one wants to see them out of. I don't want to see them out of costume. I just, I'll be kind of okay if they stayed at the house with the costumes on.
That'd be hilarious.
Just wear them
there's one
everywhere.
person that technically should always be in costume, but like, we'll talk about
Yeah.
it later.
We'll,
Like,
we'll rant about Casshan and when we get to episode 5 because
yeah.
episode 4 on the subject of costumes actually takes place on Halloween.
Oh yeah,
Ooh.
spooky.
Yeah, it barely made it for the for the season when it actually aired. And the same thing goes for TypoCon 20. Oh, actually, no. Did TypoCon? No, I'm thinking of something. No, I don't think TypoCon did the Halloween thing. Or maybe I'm misremembering. But adding back to that whole dating simulator, as you mentioned, is that even in the costume party, you see them in costume, but it's like hardly anything that they're wearing.
Oh.
Yeah, because you see Gatchaman as a Frankenstein's monster. He has like some of the stitches on his face and those bolts sticking on his head, but it's like he put the least amount of effort for his costume because he's still wearing his normal attire.
Oh right,
But
huh?
he doesn't
Yeah,
even,
yeah.
yeah, he doesn't even put like makeup on or anything. It's just whatever. And then freaking Polymer, all he does is add horns to his head. That's it.
Yeah.
Then I'm looking at Tekkaman. He's like the only one that went the extra mile. I guess, because so far I'm looking at him, all he's wearing is the Dracula cape, but he still has his sweater underneath.
I know that stupid pink sweater.
It's just like some cheap ass like lazy costumes, in comparison to the Emmy and her friend, which have like these very detailed witch costumes. Because I was looking back and I was trying to think of some. I feel like I need to be creative when I make my own witch designs because yeah, I'm gonna go a bit of a tangent by talking about their outfits, but it's a little more important to me than the rest of the episode, honestly.
Okay, go ahead.
Is that yeah, because there's a nice blend of colors, even though it's just black and pink and yellow. But what I noticed is that if you look at their hats, they have a spiral shape to them. It's not like an actual cone head per se. It's just like if someone took a wrapping and just how do I put this? It's just like a spiral shape. Like there's nothing to hold it in. So that's one thing that I find kind of. It looks like a spring. That's what I'm looking for. It looks like a spring, and they actually put stars within the hat. And then I also noticed that the skirt has the different star emblems. And for whatever reason, they have stockings, but they're mismatched. Like one has stars, the other one has full of stripes. I guess this is gonna be a good time to mention that the CGI animation. That the best way to describe is that while it replicates some human forms, it's more like if the characters are made out of plastic,
Yeah.
claymation type of thing. Because let me give you a screenshot, Falcon, because like this is one that I just barely noticed. Like especially here when the lights go out, you can see more that's like it's not like a bad model per se, but you can tell that it doesn't really look like a real person.
Yeah. Kind of know what you're talking about. Like they kind of have like this. Well, I guess I wouldn't really say action figure, but like kind of like dollish look.
It's well, I guess the best thing about it is that when you see them move, they do move smoothly. Because I guess the best example to compare, well, there's two examples I could think of when it comes to CGI animation for a TV series or movie. Is that one is the one that no one wants to talk about,
Yeah.
known for its infamy and for its dark portrayal of an adaptation. People probably know what we're
Yeah.
referring to by now.
They should.
Yeah, I mean, what else? It starts with a B.
And with a K.
Oh, yeah. But for some people, it ends with a certain sound effect. But that joke's been done to death, so why bring it up?
Yeah.
The one show I was going to mention was Cyborg 009's, well, specifically Production IG's work in Re-Cyborg and Call of Justice, because even back then when Re-Cyborg was first announced, I always thought that the trailer looked like super laggy. When Jet Link was barely flying for the first time, you see his feet transform into these jet things. It just looked like everything was in slow motion, and then the same thing kind of happened with Call of Justice, where there was sort of like minimal detail, but at the same time, they were able to have a certain art direction with it, even though it wasn't exactly the most visually engaging. But there was still something. It was definitely an improvement. But when compared to Infini-T Force, Infini-T Force just surpasses it like by far with just about everything. And that's what I really appreciate. That it doesn't have this lag movement, but it isn't exactly the most. I guess the best way to put it, it's like it's on par with pachinko CGI.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely is.
Well, then again, the reason why she got erased is revealed in episode 7. So I don't know. We'll talk about that next time, I guess.
I mean that's a
But
little late
anyways,
to reveal that, but okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's
Well,
I kind of forgot she got erased because like the next couple episodes is kind of like
well, in this episode, there's a conflict between Tekkaman and Lynn, which he kind of disagrees with her about wiping out the existence, which is actually a good thing for his character because it makes sense with the 70 series, especially when the original story was left unfinished. Because there's also a scene where Belle could have died, and Tekkaman goes out of his way to save her, and that he doesn't like the idea of killing any human or having any more of the human race die out.
right.
In her case, we don't know for sure she's actually a human being, or maybe a human being from a different dimension. But I don't know. It just adds to Tekkaman's character, and it's kind of weird how you have these really good superhero character moments, but then the next scene will be followed by some like what's happening at the house.
Yeah, it's not really a good contrast.
Yeah, and in fact, I think I want to say maybe I could be wrong, but just about every scene later is just them eating.
Yeah, I know it goes back to that thing we were saying, just about like food randomly being an anime for like no apparent reason. Like I thought that was a Toei thing, but like this is Tatsunoko now. I don't know if they
Like
like Toei starting this trend where it's just like yeah, food when you don't know what else to do.
because right now I'm like we're seeing Candy Eagle saying like, "Oh, look at me, I cooked all this shit," and then, well, actually, I was gonna ask you, how do you feel about Polymer constantly calling like Gatchaman and Tekkaman like Gramps and Professor?
Yeah, see, like that, I'm just kind of like, I guess the professor thing, I don't mind. It's more of like the Gramps, because like I don't really get the joke that much. Because like he's not that much older, is he?
I don't know because we were talking about this before in the previous 3 episodes that it seems to be kind of vague on the timelines of like superhero characters, whether they're supposed to be taken after their series ended or from a different point in time. But the fact that Ken has facial hair seems to be the only reason why they're commenting on him like, oh, he's an old man. It's like he doesn't really come out that old.
I mean, like at most, I would say he's probably a few years older than Polymer himself.
Yeah,
Like I think the
because
youngest is probably
I assume
Casshan, but then you know, I
Yeah,
don't
I'm
know.
assuming Tekkaman and Gotcha. Well, at the very least, Tekkaman and Gatchaman are acting the most mature. Polymer is the one that acting the most outgoing, immature person, and then you have Casshan, who's like the most emotionless thing here.
Yeah,
Uh, and then meanwhile, we have Emmy with her father issue angst, rebellious slash suicidal attitude.
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm still looking at the episode because right now she's fairly worried and concerned about like, what happened to my friend, and then well, apparently she disappeared because we don't remember her at all.
Wishy.
Yeah, because right now Ken Senator like, yeah, you should let your emotions out, start crying, but she's doing her, her tsundere role where like, no, I'm not gonna cry. Ugh.
Who needs tears?
There's actually I'm looking at something that I barely noticed in the background. There's a scene during this conversation where Casshan is trying to offer food to Friender and Friender's not doing anything, which I'm kind of wondering
How does
how
that
would
work?
that work?
I mean, like, a Fender's like a robot dog.
Yeah, it's like I don't think. Well, then again, how far did you go in Casshan? Because I know you haven't finished it.
Uh, I think I'm like 16 episodes in.
Because I don't remember where. I think you might have saw the Bright King boss scene already, where he says that I'm gonna like, where you see him eating.
Oh, actually, yeah, yeah.
It's just such an odd thing to see in Casshan because later down the line, like around the 30s, I think there's a scene where Breaking Boss is taking like a hot tub bath with these two robot girls, which is like it kind of comes out of nowhere, especially when they have like detailed breasts. So I'm just thinking, what
Well, there's like
is
robot
going on here?
porn one episode, right? Or something like that.
They were looking at this photograph of this robot, and I'm just thinking like, what?
I don't know, man. These robots in Casshan.
No, it's like do they have genitalia?
They
Because I know it's another scene where you see them drinking and treating humans like slaves, and they're just like partying, like at this dinner table. I'm just thinking, wait a minute. It's like, this turned into Dr. Slump for a little bit. Yeah. So that's pretty much everything in episode 4. Where going by the title's name, Imaginary Friend, it makes sense because her one friend in the world's like just mysteriously vanished. And then we move on to episode 5, Invisible Future, which is about the Casshan episode.
All right.
Because it starts off with Raja Khan knocking on the doorbell or knocking the door, whatever. And it's kind of funny because looking back at the scenes, I'm kind of wondering how he got in the building because he's taller than the door.
Remember, I found that kind of funny when he's just like standing outside. I'm like, oh, okay.
In this episode with Raja Khan, this one's a Casshan theme episode, but even then, he's like, his emotions are sort of on and off here because they sort of kind of just casually let him in. You would think they'd be a little more hostile towards him.
I know, like you even see Joji,
Especially,
he's just like drinking tea.
It's just kind of like a little odd, especially when Casshan tells him like, I know who he is. Well, who is he? He's the one that had me under control, and just sort of like the thing is, a sort of a fade out from him saying that. The opening cuts in, and they just show him inside the building. So I'm like, I don't know. But what's interesting about Raja Khan is that he's actually is a superhero from his world.
Ew.
And just like Casshan, he also had to go under an experiment under his father and became this mutated creature, which is it's a very disturbing design because even when the character sheets for first release when Anime News Network, I barely noticed that there was a person in the middle of its torso, and they do acknowledge that. So it's a little disturbing of a character design where you see this huge thing and your former human body is like locked inside of yourself.
Yeah.
Raja Khan wants to work with the Tatsunoko heroes and try to convince Emi to give the case to him. And they also mentioned talks about killing the father figure. And this is one thing I noticed about the episode series, that the father figure is a recurring thing even with the original 70s Tatsunoko shows. Yeah, especially with Gatchaman with Red Impulse, Casshan with his about rescuing his dad, and then the most obvious one being Hurricane Polymorph, which is like a recurring thing.
Oh shit, it's my dad. Gotta run away.
Yeah. It's like, hey, it kind of reminds me of my son.
No.
And then Tekkaman, in his case, is like he wants revenge because his father dies in the first episode. So I was like, oh, I must avenge my father. Fuck you, alien. Well, that's her shit. Yeah. So they mentioned this, how this is why I really wish you saw that episode, because maybe this could lead to a more serious topic probably, because episode 7 just speaks so much about the whole father thing, and it goes like in a sad direction. But yeah, we'll mention that in the future at some point. So anyways, this episode where Emi goes all out saying that she has father problems about abandonment and neglection. So you see a little more to why she's being a bit bitchy. But also, Casshan draws a lot of relation to Raja Khan, because when Raja Khan sends to in this other dimension, you see all these deformed-looking animals, and one of them is actually a reference to an art piece. When Raja Khan shows up, he's riding some elephants, and they're drawn very similar to Salvador Dali's elephants, the ones with the long, thin legs. Yeah, so that's one thing that I noticed, but then there's also a lot of weird shit, and the CGI, I'm assuming, is intentionally looking bad, because they kind of look, they really stick out. Because you see like these horses, I'm gonna give you a screenshot file, because they definitely look more plastic or toyish compared to anything else in the show. Because you see like these weird horse/frog things. I don't know what they are. They're just like freaks of nature.
Oh
But you can tell what I mean, though. They don't really mesh in too well compared to the other characters.
yeah, yeah. Those are some freaky animals, man. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, that is a really
And then we see
disturbing.
the Salvador Dali.
Yeah, it's like a horse with like fucking gorilla.
Roger Kong's mentality here is that he wants to unite all universes into this one deformed looking thing. But to sum it all up, he basically wants to do the the Alabaster route of things.
Yeah, it's like you call this ugly, but to me, it's beautiful. I'm like, oh no.
Also, the mentality that if everything is ugly, then no one will judge anybody. And there's also a sheet here where Amy reveals that she wants to save her dad because there's like this torn piece of paper. And I don't know. The thing is, Casshan could have been worked really well in this episode because he his conflict with Rasha Kong and the whole cyborg thing gets taken advantage of, where he knocks out everybody else with this gas, but the poison doesn't affect Casshan at all. Once again, it all goes back to the hell. Like, yeah, I can't feel everything, but it's not all gloom and doom for me, which I kind of wish other people would know about the Casshan. Is that the original 70s is actually an emotional character. He's maybe the most emotional out of everyone in the series.
Yeah, I mean, see, that's the one thing I felt like was really missing of this episode, since like it just seems like Tatsunoko no longer understands that aspect of the character.
Oh, I found the quote: "When grotesqueness is universal, prejudice dissolves." Those are his words, Raja Kong. And yeah, I was gonna ask you, but is Raja Kong like some sort of Middle Eastern type of name?
I mean, it kind of sounds Indian, but
Yeah, because I was thinking like Raja sounds like because I was thinking wasn't that the name of Jasmine's tiger?
yeah, probably. And then there's like, yeah,
Yeah, because I don't know if they were going for like some sort of Arabic thing or not, because especially when he shows up riding an elephant.
yeah, it does have more like an Indian vibe to it, especially with like the way like the costumes were during his backstory, and then like even like the designs on like his costume, like it just
Yeah,
kind of
because
looked like
there's like a lot of elaborate fabric work on his design.
like the patterns and everything.
Yeah, because it could also gone for like some sort of something out of more of a magical fantasy too, but no, they decided to go this route with this desolate wasteland of utility creatures.
Yeah,
It's Alabaster Land.
Alabaster Land. You see Alabaster
Oh
just like
god.
chilling in the corner. Ugh.
Yeah, like Alabaster would totally want to go there. But yeah, it does make me wonder if Rasha Kong is like, hey, let me read the Suzuka manga. You know what? Let me follow his advice.
This
I
guy
know
seemed
how it
like a
ends, but
smart dude.
maybe I can make it work. Like a Falcon to just briefly explain what Alabaster manga is.
Uh, uh,
It's just to inform people in case they don't know.
okay, so I mean, we did a whole podcast on it, but Alabaster is like often considered to be one of the darkest Tezuka series, and the series that's just like so dark, like Tezuka himself doesn't even like it that much. He actually regrets making it, which I find kind of sad because it actually is a really good manga. But it's basically about this guy who used to be like this famous athlete. He kind of gets in trouble with the law, goes to prison, and while in prison, he meets up with a scientist that was like working on this like ray that could turn people invisible. And so once he's finally done with prison, he goes to like use that ray and like possibly use it for himself so he could like regain money and stuff like that, get his wealth back. But when he's using on himself, it kind of things go wrong, and instead of making him completely invisible, they make like his skin translucent. He gets like a really ghoulish kind of look, and from then on, his like whole outlook on life kind of warps, and he gets this. What originally started as just stealing from people turns into this like one man war against beauty in a sense. And then eventually Alabaster meets up with. Oh, yeah, he changes his name to Alabaster. Before his name was like James Block. But then Alabaster kind of meets up with the scientist's granddaughter, Ami, who was born completely invisible. And together they kind of go about on this like crusade against beauty and everything like that. But it's a short series. It's like 4 volumes, I think.
It's 2 or
No,
3.
okay, 2 or 3 volumes.
Well, yeah, over here it's published as 2 volumes in condensed form.
All right, so yeah, it's probably around there, but it's a relatively short series, but it's a pretty good read. It definitely has some really incredible imagery. Like for a series that's about, invisibility, like the visuals are actually like very amazing. I mean, there's like some scenes that like just still kind of like haunt me in a way because of just like how grotesque it is. It's like I mean, just leave it to Suzuka to be like so imaginary with like invisibility, but it's a pretty good series. I recommend it. I even made a recommendation video for it, so yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the reason I wanted to for you to bring up Alabaster because just to for people could understand a bit like what this villain's like mentality was going to be Raja Khan when compared to Alabaster, especially with the whole animal usage. Well, the ones in Alabaster are probably more disturbing things, but just to give you an idea, if you're curious of seeing a more elaborate pursuit direction of this type of um, goal, since you're not gonna see that come to fruition in this series, I don't think so.
Yeah, especially since they kind of
Yeah,
get done with like all of Raja Khan's stuff and like in this episode.
yeah. Well, to me, this is the only part that I didn't like about the episode, is when Casshan's trying to convince him about about the goodness of humanity and all that. Is at the very end, it just comes off as so corny. Not even a campy corny like superhero way. It just comes off as like, oh, why? So here he goes. The quote is, "Listen, Khan, to live is to pursue one's own unique wish, no matter how small. And one day I'll know what it's like to savor avocado cream pasta." I'm just like I understand it refers to your lack of sense of taste, so you can actually, it will signify that he's becoming human again. But to me, that line just comes off as, oh, come on, really?
But he wants the avocado cream.
It's like maybe he wants the avocado cream of his girlfriend, if you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, to those who don't know, Casshan actually has a girlfriend. Her name is Luna
yeah.
from the original Casshan, not Luna from Casshan Sins, because those two want to straight up murder each other, which is total contradiction compared to the original.
Oh, really? The fuck?
Yeah, in Casshan Sins, he threatens to kill her.
Jeez, what the
They're not even dating. They're not even human before. They're just straight up machines. So that's the thing that bothers me. It's like they don't. That's why I'm saying if you watch the original Casshan and then you watch Sins, it's like what is going on? What kind of parallel universe did I stumble myself into?
Oh, jeez. The fuck?
Yeah, so
Okay,
so
yeah.
me and Falcon joke around with Casshan and Luna because that's Casshan's whole motivation is to I want to get back my humanity so you could be part of the human race so people won't be prejudiced against you. No, so I can fuck my girlfriend.
Yeah.
She's the only one for me.
I mean, like, he was a young boy and then he had his humanity taken away. So, like,
Well,
yeah.
he chose to give it up to save his family. But that's the thing, because Casshan's story is very sad. It's him just trying to get his family back. I mean, things that go bad when you get your house taken over and your dog is killed.
I mean, like, for Casshan's case, like, everything, literally everything was taken away from him. This is not just like, oh, they took my family. It's like, no, they took my family, they took my house, they took my dog, they took my humanity. It's like, what didn't what didn't Bright King Boss take away from me?
My virginity.
Oh yeah, pretty much. And like when that's
I
the only
still
thing,
have that. Oh no.
when that's the only thing you have left, I mean, there's something wrong.
Oh, I don't even have like a cyber penis. Ah, shit. Install
Pretty,
the vibrator, Dad.
and I'm pretty sure Bright King Boss does though.
Oh, no. So wrong. So what is he? If he ever finds out, like, oh, Swanee's Casshan's mom, eh?
He busts out his dick. His dick
Unzip.
I don't know. Like maybe he just
Oh,
like it just springs out of his body. Like you see this like weird drill,
oh, it's actual drill.
like an actual drill, and like just unscrews whoever he's having sex with.
Like a power drill and sticking out a school.
Yeah, I mean, like maybe it screws and unscrews. Like it just goes in and out, in and out. And that's how they do it. Little grease.
Oh no, that's so messed up.
Oh, cause like I remember that's how they kind of did it in that one panty and stocking episode, like where they turned into Transformers. They still
Oh,
managed to have sex that way, so like, you know.
I don't know. No. But anyways,
Yeah,
Casshan, like,
Casshan.
like it's the most emotion he's shown in Infinity Force thus far. I just wish he stayed like this for the 100% of the time, but he doesn't.
Yeah, especially when he just gets emotional for pasta.
Yeah, because we don't even know if he was taken away when Breaking Boss was still in power, or if he'd already defeated Breaking Boss. I don't know.
You see,
Like he
'cause,
doesn't
like,
even.
that's
Yeah.
really crucial information right there because like again, in Kashan's world, like everyone's like every fucking episode of the original series, like if Kashan doesn't do it, no one will. Fight on, Kashan. So it's like if he did not defeat Viking Boss, his world's like he's gonna come back to his world and he's gonna get screwed.
Oh, well, speaking of that, okay, in the Tatsunoko versus Capcom game, there's some cutscenes that are only in the Japanese version.
No.
There's actual animation. You can find it on YouTube. Is that there was one where I don't know what the message is supposed to be, whether it's supposed to be like a downer or a hopeful one, because it takes place in Mega Man story, and one or I think it was Mega Man. I don't know, but you see some kids and they're playing like in the dirt and everything looks destroyed, and one of the kids picks up like a Kashan's helmet.
Oh.
So I don't know if that means that if Casshan lost
Oh God.
or not. It's like well, I don't get it. It's like what does it mean? It's like that's the whole cutscene. I'm just like what does that mean? Did he
But like
win? Did he won? Did he lose? I don't know.
the helmet's like a part of him now, like at least in the original series, can't really take it off.
Yeah, so I don't know what's up with
So that's like his head basically.
yeah. Oh yeah. Before I forget, Tekkaman Blade could also relate with Raja Kong in this episode since like some people view him as a monster because I mentioned this in a conversation that we didn't record, but I'm just repeating it for for the sake of this podcast. Is that Tekkaman Blade? What makes Blade different from the first Tekkaman is the original Tekkaman. He only has a 30-minute time limit of being in power, and after that, if he goes beyond that, he will die. The same thing goes for Polymer. If he goes beyond 47 minutes in the costume, he will die. And in the case of Tekkaman Blade, when he goes beyond the 30-minute time frame, he goes out of control, similar to Guyver when he goes on autopilot. So Tekkaman Blade will be killing pretty much anything that moves. So him being kind of treated as a monster and by some people kind of relates with Raja Kong as well, since they're not exactly 100% human.
Hmm.
Yeah, because I know in terms of Gatchaman and Polymer, they're still human. They just have it's pretty much the power comes from the costume, basically. Well, the Gatchaman's case, I don't fuck. Well, then again, with Polymer and Gatchaman, with the type of training they have, maybe they are superhuman to some extent.
Yes.
I don't know, because Polymer's karate and then the Gatchaman being a ninja, so I don't know.
Scientific
But
ninja.
Tekman and Casshan, their DNA is altered. they're not they're not 100% human anymore. Yeah, so that pretty much marks. Oh yeah, so by the end of the episode, Raja Kong is put into this prison cell. It comes out of nowhere. They're just like locked him up somehow, and they just leave. So
And like after that, we don't. I mean, I don't know about episode 7, but like you don't really see him after that.
yeah, you haven't seen Raja Kong yet, but episode 5 ends with Damian Gray showing up again and attacking Candy Eagle,
Stabbing him in
and
the
the
back.
episode ends on a cliffhanger.
You can't transform.
And we'll talk about, and the last episode of this podcast would be episode 6, which is called Infini-T Force.
Whoa.
Hey.
You said the name. It's like we're halfway over with the series by like it's a 12-episode series or it's a...
Yeah, it's 12 episodes. In this episode, it starts off with Brandon Gray. He's still, Damian Gray. He's still around, and he injects something to Guy, which prevents him from transforming. And throughout the episode, that's what he pretty much does. He keeps stabbing all the different characters and takes their DNA or something from them, which prevents them from transforming. The only one that raises questions for me is Casshan, because he loses his power.
His human form is like a holographic projection, so just like, Casshan is, the way he is in costume is how he's just supposed to.
If anything, the opposite should happen. He should no longer be able to look like a human. And you know what I just realized what Casshan is in this series?
What?
He's like Nightcrawler from X-Men Evolution.
Oh.
Yeah, because Nightcrawler in that series, he had something to give him a human appearance. So when he was in high school.
Right. That way he was.
Yeah, so there's that, I guess. But anyways, in this episode, this one's all about stroking Candy Eagle's ego. But because he's like the ultimate ninja warrior in this one. But yeah, because what's kind of cool is that you see him carry Tekkaman's Tekkaman's Lancer. Yeah, basically he had to use go the Batman approach for using all these different tools to overcome Damian Gray. Okay. And so yeah, it was more of an action theme. And one thing I do like for attention to detail is that when he defeats Casshan, he actually spills like oil, or he spills gasoline, and since Casshan has no sense of smell, he doesn't know about it, and he's caught in the trap. So that was clever.
Right.
Okay, one of the things that I need to address, because it doesn't seem to happen in Infini-T Force, is that it all goes back to Casshan, is that Friender, he's able to transform too, and he hasn't done any transformations because Hurricane Polymer has the ability to turn into like a boat, an airplane, a car, like some mining drill, and like this big wheel thing. I don't know. There's a couple different variations, but Friender, he's also known to turn into like a car, underground drill, a plane, and I think a submarine also. Friender hasn't shown any of those transformations at all, which would have been a real help in this episode, since he and Candy Eagle are teaming up. But even then, like, Damian Gray still seems to be a recurring threat for some reason, and so far, he's the only villain that I don't really understand his motivations.
Yeah.
Because I remember, like, in episode 3, he mentioned that, or episode 2, one of those, is that he mentioned that he was a former hero, and then he was kidnapped and experimented. And ever since he was experimented, people didn't look at him the right way, and he just sort of just gave in to the dark side pretty quickly. And his objective was like, well, if I can't be the hero, then I'll be the darkest villain ever. Which to me, I'm thinking, I don't know if Polymer said anything or not, but I kind of wish he said that you were never good to begin with, because no true symbol of justice would sway to evil that easily. He could have been like a hero from the shadows, like like the Gargoyles or somebody, where he doesn't get the respect, or like the Mutants from the X-Men, where he still does good, but people view him as a menace. Yeah. But no, he just went for the villain route, and so far he might be the most dangerous character of the series. Just the fact that he could depower them with ease.
Like, I don't really totally understand all of his powers, really. Because he has that and the ability to make things float, telekinesis thing, where you got this thing where you could transform into different people, like.
Weird. Yeah, I don't know. He seems to have like numerous abilities with Rasha Kong. Like, he also was able to transform to this thing, and the other one, Belle Lynn, her thing was just mostly combat based, so she got like this, like. And one little Easter egg that I noticed that all the villains have is that when they teleport, they have the same effects from the opening of Tekkaman that has like these weird spirals that you can see in the Tekkaman opening, which that I appreciate. But yeah, episode 6, in terms of storyline, I'm trying to remember like what else happens, because I know Emi kind of like sees Gatchaman in a different light. So now I'm kind of wondering if they're gonna try to pair them up, because it's not an impossibility with the way this series has been going.
Come to Gramps.
Yeah, and then the other thing which kind of annoys, well, somewhat annoys me a bit, is that after he defeats Damian, Gatchaman says, "I want curry." I'm like, oh, come on.
Yeah, I
Fuck
know.
you.
It's like the first thing you say is food. I'm like, I'm going back to
It's
the
way all the
dating.
superheroics.
No, they have to go back to
You
that
know,
dating scenario, and it's like, hey, we got a quota to fill.
I'm trying to remember because I want to say I must have saw something either from Dragon Ball or like this was a couple of months back. I forgot what I was watching, but they were having like it was an older anime. I don't remember what, but there was a scene of them eating. It was like only for a few seconds, and then I'm thinking, wow, if that was done today, oh boy, they would be commenting on every fucking little thing. I don't know what's up with this food gimmick. Supposedly, like some told us that the Infinity Force manga is actually a little more comedic, but who knows how different it really is, because I need to look for it.
Yeah.
I would have to buy and read Volume 1, because I still don't have my Volume 1 of Grimoire either, so that's something I want to review as I buy the volumes.
Yeah, gotta get my hands on those because those are already out in the manga, right?
Yeah, it should be out there, but mine hasn't shipped. So, anyways, episode 6, the way it ends, it once again ends on the cliffhanger note where Amy receives a message from her dad that she wants to meet him, well, speak with him. And then you see like this secret base where you see these robots in the forms of the Tatsunoko heroes.
Hmm.
And you actually do see those robots in the next episode, which is a mix of dramatic storytelling, and superhero action. And episode 7 is where things take I guess, a tone for the darker. But that's all we can say for right now with Infinity Force. Do you think it still has time to save itself into something greater?
See, that's the thing. I mean, I haven't seen this episode 7 because, like, episode 7, you're saying there's this big reveal, so I'm not sure how I'm gonna feel about that. I'll probably watch it today. I might tweet about it. I've just been kind of avoiding Twitter because I feel bad I haven't made a video, and like, I haven't even made a video to apologize because, like, what the fuck, October is like way past due. So I've been like, I don't really feel like posting on Twitter because then it's going like, or what the fuck, or you have time to tweet, but you don't have time to make a damn video. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, but
Well, a tweet is shorter.
yeah, yeah, that's true. That is true. But yeah, I don't know. I might go back to Twitter. I need to do something social for my channel. Um, so I don't know how episode 7 is going to be like, but like so far it's just like it's like one of those remake slash reboot kind of things that we've gotten recently, where it's like you get excited and then you watch them and it's just like it's kind of like why like was there an understanding of the original source material? Because like with some characters it's just different. Again, it's like the action is fine, it's fun, it's great seeing all these characters come together and kick ass. But like beyond that, like again, like the villains, I don't really care that much about. Like I felt like a lot of them could have had like a little bit more development. Like Rajal Khan, if he had like a little bit more episodes and like a little bit more of understanding, then that would have been fine. But we don't get that luxury, especially since this is a 12 episode series, and like it's getting 2 movies, right?
One movie.
I'm not sure if that's a recap or if it's going to be like a proper sequel to the anime. That I don't know.
Because I'm starting to worry that it's just going to be a recap of the whole thing condensed into a film.
And see,
It just
for
feels
that, I'm wondering how that's going to be. Since if it's a recap and if it's condensed, maybe it might be easier to digest. Of course, you lose a lot of character moments and whatnot, but then maybe it'll just be a fun little crossover when it's
I
shortened
don't
down to
know.
like a couple
Something
hours.
tells me they're going to focus more on the Emmy with her father's problem, mostly from her perspective. But that's the thing that I'm kind of wondering, like why they mishmash two things together. This is kind of the reason why I'm not really a big fan of Part 4 Lupin Blue Jacket, because the main plot of the series revolves around this girl character that was never part of the original series before, but now is, and probably will never be again.
Mm.
Sort of just a one-time go thing, and that's one thing I kind of don't like when, oh yeah, we're gonna get all these old franchises together, but the story is not about them, it's about this girl. her problems.
Yeah, and then like as we were saying, how like it goes from a cool superhero show to a dating some reverse harem thing. It's just kind of like very contrasting. It's like why and how.
Yeah, who knows?
And then of
But
course you get the whole Casshan thing.
yeah, because originally I was expecting this to be like this super cool thing, where so far it just seems to be like an average superhero title.
I mean, at least it's average. Like I wouldn't want this to be like totally bad or like, at least it's not Adam in the beginning, because that's probably
Yeah.
one of the most disappointing animes I watched
Oh,
this year.
I had on the beginning.
Yeah, fucking
Oh.
VR fridge.
Oh,
I still haven't
yeah.
let that go. Like people think I'd forget. Like no, I'll never forget VR fridge. Fucking piece of shit.
Never
Never forget.
Oh,
Because I want to make a
Berserk,
list
yeah.
of like disappointing anime too. Like I'm going to make a list of my favorite anime from 2017 as well as like the most disappointing anime. Adam's definitely going to be on there.
Oh shit. I even forgot about it. Oh yeah, there was that show.
And we talked about it on podcast.
Yeah, I should probably compile all of that in one video, maybe. Well, I don't know, because it just comes off like a big rant of just out in the beginning. It was just,
And see, like
but we got
I
Pluto to look
remember,
forward to.
yeah,
And
Pluto should be good because I remember I knew someone they were watching it. I'm like, oh, it's a fun series. I'm just kind of like sitting there in the corner. I'm like, fun in what way?
yeah, and hopefully one day that Astro Boy reboot will freaking happen next year, along
Oh,
with Cobra.
yeah,
But
what the fuck is taking so long for this thing?
I don't know. I just really hope that it just don't become cancel projects. I'm like, oh, fuck this.
I mean, for Adam's case, considering who and what Adam is both a character and franchise, you think there'll be much more news surrounding it. I mean, this is like the character that started it all in a sense, and like he doesn't really get the greatest treatment. It's like how?
Yeah, with France, I'm assuming they will pull through with Cobra since French are the ones doing it, and Cobra's like home turf.
Despite being American.
Yeah, or made by a Japanese person originally. So
Yeah.
oh well.
Funny how that works, but
Yeah, it's like the French love it. Meanwhile, Lupin, it's like the Italians love it despite being French character.
made by Japanese guy.
But yeah, hopefully Lupin Part 5 will be exciting. But anyways, with Infinity Force is that I was gonna bring up something about the whole mediocrity thing, along with okay, to me my biggest disappointment with Infinity Force right now is that it doesn't seem to be a good introduction to the '70s Tatsunoko shows in general because they haven't done a good job explaining who they are, who their backgrounds are, what their powers are, what villains they're fighting, what they stand for, and all that stuff.
Yeah, because like the only one that you got like a somewhat not even good understanding, but like in the first episode, we see Ken, he's like fighting Galactor and everything, and then like he gets transported to like I guess our world in a sense. But like
Whatever.
you at least see that, but like Polymer was like technically already there. We see Tekkaman just come down in a spaceship, and then like Casshan just shows up and he's like evil for a bit. And like that's
Yeah,
it, and like there's no backstory. You don't hear anything, and like a lot of these characters, like it only seems like Ken is the only one that's worried about coming back to his
yeah,
reality.
yeah. With Tekkaman, it seems more like he just went to that world out of his own free will because they mentioned in episode 2 or 3, I forgot which one again. They mentioned that he was traveling through space looking for a new. So yeah, Infinity Force. We'll see what it has to offer in the next couple of weeks.
That we will. I mean, hopefully there is more of a improvement, but we got like 4 or 5 episodes left, so
We need 7. Well, yeah, episode 7 already aired, but we'll talk about the next one. So we'll probably talk about 7, 8, and 9 on the next recording, and then 10, 11, 12 for its finale.
yep, and then that'll either just be a proper review or just a straight up rant.
Yeah, but what I'm hoping more than anything that it just doesn't become this just grand disappointment of like, oh, because so far I feel like Infinity Force could go that route where it just doesn't succeed in getting new people into the original stuff.
See, that's the thing. I don't really think it will. Um, I don't know. I
Yeah,
mean, especially for someone like me, I like knowing things ahead of time. Like, like I have to go back and watch things so I could properly understand everything. And like, Infinity Force really doesn't help you out.
no, especially when you have to go into, because it's one of those shows that I hate that it's for established fans, but it's not just for one particular show. It's for 4 different series that you need to be fully aware of. But when you go in with that knowledge, the shows don't reflect being aimed at the older crowd. It's aimed at a new crowd, but I don't get what's wrong with this. Like, you aim it for a new audience, so expect it's a Tiger Mask double approach where you're aiming this to new people, but you give barely competent explanations of who the characters originally were for the older fan base. The source fan base, the source material. Your original moneymaker, but meh. Oh shit. I think that's enough.